16 hours. The digital phantoms that haunted Global Mega Finance Corp were, on a good day, merely troublesome specters. Yet, every 6 months, with the grim predictability of a condemned man's last meal, a Thursday night would be chosen for the great ritual, a deployment. The office, that night, was an unhallowed hall, teeming with figures both living and, it seemed, half-living. Rachel, the release manager, a woman of steely nerve and weary eye, presided over this nocturnal congress of code and chaos. A small cadre of operations personnel, their fingers poised over keyboards like instruments of arcane ritual, formed the core. Around them, a larger throng of developers and testers lingered, their presence more spectral than substantial, ready to lend aid should the digital malady truly take hold. Among these, Jack stood preeminent, a veteran of 4 such nocturnal vigils, his countenance etched with the faint lines of past battles. Others, like Sam, a neophyte to these unholy rites, watched with a mixture of apprehension and morbid curiosity. The company, in its own peculiar benevolence, offered a potent elixir to temper the bitterness of these extended hours, time and a half from 5 of the clock, escalating to double once the shadows lengthened and the hours grew truly unsociable. Unlike the elusive bonus, this was a tangible, guaranteed recompense, a promise of freedom from the bony grip of overdrafts, a means to acquire the latest, gleaming digital baubles. And, as if to further sweeten the bitter draught, a spread of lukewarm pizza and tepid beverages was laid out, a grim feast for the condemned. Each deployment was prefaced by a scroll of arcane instructions, a checklist meticulously crafted by developers. Tess, from the operations team, a quiet figure of immense patience, was the designated acolyte, her task to perform each sacred act and mark its completion, a solitary vigil under the watchful eye of Rachel. The first invocation, the database backup, consumed an hour, a glacial crawl of a progress bar. For 60 minutes, over $3,000 in overtime wages bled from the company's coffers, a silent testament to the sluggishness of their digital leviathan. It was a peculiar theatrical arrangement. Tess silently and diligently executed tasks she barely comprehended. Database scripts, system configurations, the copying and renaming of files, the updating of ports. She was a lone performer on a stage surrounded by an audience of idlers. Developers, though authors of the very application, were forbidden access to the production servers, a curious disjunct. When the inevitable roadblocks arose, the subtle discrepancies between environments, the insidious database schema drift, Tess, a digital oracle, would turn to the throng of developers, their combined wisdom her only recourse. Typically, 6 hours would see the deployment and testing completed. Typically. But the loom of fate, as ever, weaves its own unpredictable tapestry. After 5 hours of these operations tasks, Tess, her silent vigil concluded, nibbled at a cold, forlorn slice of pizza. The testers, stirring from their torpor, rubbed the sleep from their eyes and commenced their smoke tests. The digital air crackled with anticipation. Then, a sudden chill. They could not log in. A malignant spirit had surely infected the system. In a flash, Jack, the most seasoned of the digital shamans, had summoned a sub-team. Their mission, to conjure a diagnostic tool, a digital exorcism to banish the malevolent entity. Within minutes, a new project was spawned, a crucible of code into which they poured their desperate hopes. Sam, eager to prove his mettle, offered his assistance, but Jack, ever the gatekeeper of the inner circle, waved him away. This was a task for the initiated, An epic struggle against the encroaching dawn. 10 hours. 10 hours remained before 400 souls would arrive at their digital workbenches, expecting the machinery to hum. Failure meant a hemorrhaging of $12,000 an hour, a catastrophic bleed for the corporation. "How fares the battle, Jack?" Rachel's voice, a tentative whisper, broke the tense silence. Jack, a man possessed, his gaze fixed on the glowing screen, offered only a fleeting glance, his fingers a blur across the keyboard. To Rachel, the scene was chaos, a maelstrom of disjointed efforts. Information, like vital blood, refused to flow between the self-appointed factions. Each approached the problem from a different angle, and the refrain, "Did you definitely follow the checklist?" echoed with maddening regularity, a torture for the beleaguered Tess. Rachel, the nominal commander, felt her authority slip like sand through her fingers, her voice lost in the cacophony. "Jack, might I inquire about a small matter?" Sam's voice, timid as a mouse, dared to pierce the intense focus. "Not now, Sam. The daemon of the diagnostic tool demands my undivided attention, lest we all succumb to its wrath." Jack felt the sugar surge through his veins, an artificial strength, a prelude to a heroic feat. He savored the recognition, the adulation that invariably followed heroics, like the promotion to lead developer that had crowned his rescue of the previous, ill-fated release. But the relentless march of the hours, the faint, nascent glow on the eastern horizon, bespoke the true antagonist, time itself. "Jack, might I inquire about a small matter?" Sam's voice, a peculiar echo, resonated through the stillness. Had he not just uttered those very words? Jack blinked. 7 hours had vanished, swallowed by the digital abyss. It was 6 in the morning. 3 hours remained before the unholy throng descended. "Sam, I must conclude this ritual. Time, like a predatory beast, snaps at my heels." Jack's fingers danced, a frenetic blur. He had conceived of a method, a digital proxy to intercept the application's API calls, to log their every whisper and groan. Once crafted, a simple repointing of a few configuration files in the desolate production environment, and the secrets would be laid bare. The problem, once revealed, would crumble before his genius. A brief respite. Rachel and Sam had vanished, leaving him to his communion with the code. The project managers, their faces pallid, sweated like men awaiting execution. The developers, their tempers frayed, snapped at each other, their suggestions to Jack a futile clamor. Tess, weary and resentful, cursed the developers for this malevolent application. Just as the collective finger began to point its accusatory digit at the testers, Rachel swept back into the room, a harbinger of new, unwelcome tidings. "Jack," her voice cut through the air, what fresh torment did she bring? "A go-no-go colloquy awaits us in the meeting room. Immediately. But I am on the precipice of triumph. 10 minutes, no more. Your presence, as our most experienced seer, is essential." Tess watched, a silent observer of this strange charade. The flattery, a potent anodyne, had worked its magic. Jack followed Rachel, his grumbling swallowed by the yawning mouth of the meeting room, his entourage of developers and project managers trailing like a sorrowful procession. Inside the meeting room, Rachel's prediction proved true. The debate, at first a furious tempest of argument, soon dwindled to a lethargic murmur. Jack fumed, a silent rage, at Rachel's interference. Should his diagnostic triumph fail, the blame, he knew, would rest squarely upon her shoulders. A faint rapping at the door, a tentative sound that stilled the languid debate. Sam's head, like a cautious creature from a burrow, poked into the room. "They are testing the application now," he stated, his voice hushed. Jack blinked. "How?" "The application was a broken thing." "Thank you, Sam." Rachel's voice, surprisingly serene, filled the silence. "And what, pray tell, was the root of this digital affliction?" The simple act of double-clicking the installer file was absent from the sacred checklist. Rachel's stratagem, in its elegant simplicity, was a revelation. After Sam's repeated frustrated attempts to engage Jack, Rachel had sought him out. He, in turn, had recounted his quiet vigil with Tess, meticulously reviewing each step of the checklist, each confirmation of its completion. And, at the end, a jarring absence. After copying the installer, there was no command to execute it. Tess, upon his query, had unearthed the previous release's checklist, a forgotten relic that contained the crucial step. With a quiet word to the test manager, Rachel had cleared the room, leaving Sam, Tess, and the testers to complete the deployment in peace, unburdened by Jack and his self-important entourage. 6 months later, the reduced team of Rachel, Sam, Tess, and the test team, working in quiet harmony, completed the deployment in less than 3 hours. It was a testament to the strange magic that occurs when one simply empties the room of its superfluous, hindering presences. Yet, as always, the organization's immune system, a curious beast, asserted itself. The rewards for these terrible, drawn-out nocturnal dramas were simply too alluring, too deeply ingrained for any lasting improvement to take root. The building now stands empty, a grim monument to the perverse incentives that rewarded dysfunction, a silent testament to the chilling tales of deployments past.